Today we have Tommy Lonergan. Dude, your story is wild that you went from being a chef at 22 years old, walking away from everything, booked a one-way ticket to Dubai, then you got into like the travel hacking world. The fact that you have redeemed over $1 million in travel is out of this world.
You're not waiting in line to check in. You're not paying for any bags. You're going to get escorted to the lounge. Unlimited caviar, unlimited Dom P.
Yeah.
The trip itself, it starts the second you walk into the airport.
Do you have a black card, by the way?
I don't. Black card's not a great points earning card.
Welcome back to another episode of the Austin Zaback Show. Today we have Tommy Lonergan on the show. And I really appreciate you being here, bro. You know, this is going to be a really fun one because travel and travel hacking and points and credit cards and all of that are so popular right now, right? And that's obviously how I met you. I met you because you actually just recently helped me book a trip, which we'll talk about.
Oh, yeah.
And dude, your story is wild. I actually had no idea that you went from being a chef at 22 years old to then eventually just walking away from everything. You booked a one-way ticket to Dubai, and then you got into like the travel hacking world, right? And I'm actually really excited to jump into all of that and like how that came to be, and then really give a bunch of practical, tips, obviously, for people looking to travel more, right? And trying to figure out like how do they travel, how do they save money when they travel, and things of that nature. So I appreciate you being on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Man. Excited to be here.
So, dude, talk to me a little bit, man. You, obviously reading your story, the fact that you have redeemed over 10 million points is out of this world, right? and obviously that equates to like $2 million in travel. And in 2023 alone, you redeemed 4.7 million points, which is ridiculous. I thought my measly like 1.5 was a lot, I have a little ways to go. We'll jump into all that. But like, how did you learn that world, I guess, is my first question. When I look at that world, like before I met you, I was trying to figure out, I had all the points, right? Well, I was starting to gain them, by charging my American Express and thinking that I was doing it all right. And then I tried booking a trip on my own and I just gave up. Like, I'm not gonna lie, just totally gave up. I like subscribed to like points.me and a bunch of other crap. I was reading like, Instagram posts and stuff. And then I tried booking it on my own and I was like, dude, this is actually really hard. And then I hit you up and you're just like, boom, 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 bang, 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 like, exactly what you're doing. So like, how'd you learn all that?
Yeah, so I think the biggest piece for me was, I got the travel bug probably 22, 23 years old, but also figured out that travel can be expensive. So, I was living out in Vail, Colorado. I was skiing, had good work-life quality balance. So it was like, how can I achieve more travel without impacting, the work-life balance, getting a second job? Like, there's got to be another way to do this. So, essentially I kind of enter in the world of credit card points and miles and elite statuses and just the whole kind of world of travel hacking. And I just went down the rabbit hole. And I just started educating. And every day I'm reading articles about, not only just the points, but the credit, learning all about credit, the credit cards, the miles, what we can do with them. And I started executing. And next thing you know, I'm taking a free trip. I'm flying over to Nepal and Dubai. I'm flying economy at the time, which back then it was all about just being able to take more trips. And really, man, over the course of the next decade, it was just continuing to educate, but then the execution piece. There's, this whole thing used to be kind of like behind closed doors. It was kind of like one of those, like, if you know, you know.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people. There's tons of great accounts out there. There's so much content around the travel hacking piece. But then there's, like I said, there's talking about it, and then there's actually taking the action on it. And that's where I just like, I talk about it, but I eat, sleep, and drink this stuff. It literally, my life revolves around it. But the idea was, how can I travel without the costs? How can I travel more luxuriously without the costs? And it all started with just learning how to maximize and optimize your spend. And you don't need to be a business owner spending hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a month. I had a sub six figure salary. So I was able to take just my everyday expenses, in my early 20s and just turn them into three, 4 big international trips a year. And well, then all of a sudden I got the taste of business class and first class. And then that thing kind of, spiraled down from there. But that's just kind of like the basics of how I got into it. I wanted to travel more, and how could I do it without the costs?
So really cool story, right? And I love how you were able to pull that off. How long was the learning curve? Like obviously we just talked about me trying to go do it, right? And I'll give a little backstory to the viewer. You know, when I jumped on a Zoom call with you about a week ago, right? And you're walking me through, and I remember one particular time where we were about to pick a seat on a particular airline, and you were like, hold on, wait a minute, you know? And you were like, pick an odd row, not an even row, right? And like, you know, like the stuff, I feel like, you know, that would take a decade to learn. So how long would you say from the time that you really started to look into it and dive into the world of traveling and travel hacking until you really felt like you had a really good knowledge of being able to, I guess, maximize the point value of what you have?
Yeah, you know, I would say, well, I'll admit first off that just like anybody else, when I started this, I might not have been using my points the best way. You know, I might have been going through Capital One Travel, but yeah, I figured out like that points earning piece, you know, kind of first. That one's not anywhere near as like deep, if you will, but the redeeming of the points, how are we using the points? That part, my friend, is deep. There's layers and layers and layers. And as you saw, like even just, okay, we found a flight, but wait, what's the best seat? What aircraft am I on? Is this going to be the good business class or is this not the good one? So in terms of like just how much information is on the back end side of redeeming these points, that's where like, I mean, I still learn something new every day. But I mean, I would say the education piece, I mean, I would say probably like, you know, kind of 4 years into it, all of a sudden I'm like, okay, like you're onto something here. Like I said, that's kind of when the business class stuff started to come in. You know, I got the elite status is kind of coming into play. So I started to really kind of just build on that foundational piece of, like you said, fixing my credit. I started to get the right few cards, started using them the right way. But then once I figured out, you know, really how to start maximizing, you know, redeeming the points, and dude, like I said, it takes time. And I think that's the biggest piece where most people can figure out, you know, getting a few cards, maybe they're earning the right types of points, but that roadblock for most people is like, okay, I'm seeing all these people do this, but I'm not seeing it. I'm seeing flights for 300,000 or 400,000 points. They're saying you can book it for 50 or 60,000. So it's just the time piece that like kind of goes in, and most people don't want to put in the time to, you know, figure it out and do it on their own. But what I will say now is, compared to 5, 6, 7 years ago, there is so much content out there now too. So even with, you know, the YouTubes, you know, the social media pages, I mean, people are really kind of walking you through a lot of this stuff where that wasn't around 7, 8 years ago. So I would say the ability for people to attempt to learn this on their own, it's a little bit easier, but at the end of the day, it's still going to take time. You know, you got to know about, you know, the airlines themselves. When are they releasing seats? Where do they even fly to? So you got to do a lot. You have to spend a lot of time figuring out all the right information in order for you to be able to like execute on it. So in those layers, those are the layers that you're not, you know, you can't put all those layers in a 15-second Instagram reel. Sure. You know, so the deeper down the rabbit hole you go, the bigger and badder the travel is going to ultimately get. But like I said, man, I started this over 10 years ago, and I'm still learning something new every day because it's constantly changing. Yeah. But let's just say this, in terms of like the resources and the tools that are out there now, if you want to learn this, you can go do it, or you can have somebody do it for you.
I don't know if you know this, but the majority of the views that we get are from people that are not subscribed. So do me a huge favor and subscribe if you like the podcast so far. Smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and let's just go ahead and get back to the interview, which is what I chose to do. And I think a lot of other people, right? I think I got to a point where I said, you know, why would I want to even learn that, right? Like, I'm good at what I do. I'm a business owner. I run, you know, multiple different companies, and I stack points, obviously. I just need to know a guy, right? And my guy is Tommy, you know, and for me, I prefer it that way, right? Because you can do what you're great at, I can do what I'm great at, and then we could just work together and we could create a dope trip, you know. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that would just actually prefer to go that route. And then, of course, you're going to have some people that want to go learn it on their own. That's okay, obviously, right? So I want to talk about a trip that we just booked really quick. And there's so much I want to talk about, by the way. Make sure you stay to the end of the video because we're going to really get into, I'm going to ask Tommy the best airlines and the craziest flight he's ever been on. We're going to get into it. But we just booked a trip, I believe, for roughly 1.5 million points. Okay, me and my fiance, so 2 people. And The total cost of the trip would have been about 70 grand.
Yep.
Had we paid cash.
Yep.
Okay. We ended up paying about 10 grand.
Mm-hmm.
So we saved $60,000, okay, by booking the trip with you. And I'll give people the itinerary. So we're going to go from, here to Thailand, bounce around in Thailand a little bit. We're flying business class Emirates with the possibility of maybe going first class. Still working on it.
We'll get that piece.
And then, staying at multiple hotels in Thailand, 4 or 5-star hotels, and then flying from Thailand to the Maldives, staying in the Marriott Overwater Bungalow, right, for like 5 or 6 nights.
Mm-hmm.
So total 2-week trip, right? We're talking, you like to call these trips, what do you call them? The full
I call it a full send, or this
full
one
send.
is like the travel like Tommy, like certified like full send trip here, for sure.
Which is what it is, right? And we did all that, like I said, for 10K cash, right? And then obviously the points, and I think, because that was a trip that for me, like, even if I would have had the 70 grand, right? Like, which I do, obviously, I don't think I'd spend 70 grand on a trip like that, like personally. Like I go buy a new car, or I go whatever. I don't know. Like but I'm much more willing to spend 10 grand, so that was a hell of a trip, right?
Yep.
And again, it goes back to what you're talking about. You really knew, like, okay, I mean, you have it dialed. Like, okay, here's the airline you got to fly. Here's the time. Here's and even looking at like the aircraft, right? Like, okay, you're flying there on an Airbus A380. You're flying home on a Boeing 777 or whatever, right? And which one has the best first class? And like, I mean, you really like, dude. I mean, we're talking about a lot of knowledge.
Yeah. So I think like the biggest thing, just kind of on the points in general, kind of back on your point, where it's like, hey, would I want to go do this trip? Of course, but would I want to pay the $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to go do something like this? No.
Yeah.
But with the points, and this is how I've always been kind of too, it's like the points allow you to kind of take that cost factor out of your decision. Where it's like, okay, I can go do this, and it's not going to cost me $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000. And the points allow you to kind of like unlock that travel, and not just travel, but like these are epic travel experiences, man. It's not like, the second you get to the airport, you're rolling into the lounge. I mean, the trip starts the second you start traveling. It's not when you get to where you're going. The flights are going to be insane. But yeah, I mean, to be able to take that kind of trip, and like I said, I think we did 1.5 million points. And about 10,000 out of pocket, which was unavoidable, taxes, fees, all that kind of stuff. But and we got 6 or 7x value on your points based off how we use them.
Yep.
So, like to frame that out, like that would have cost you 6.7 million Amex points if we just went to Amex Travel, and we were able to do it for that. So, the points can do some really cool things, and if you're able to understand how to use them, or know somebody that knows how to use them, what you can get out of them it's absolutely insane. And like I said, in just about a month here, you'll be able to experience that firsthand. But that's always how I've been, where it's like, hey, I want to do this. This would be amazing, but I can't, whether it was I can't afford to, or hey, this doesn't make sense for me to go do this. But I got some points.
Yeah.
I can go do that. And I'm not even going to think about, is it should I do it or not? No, it's like, dude, you've got points. You can go do it, and you can unlock those insane travel experiences that you will remember for the rest of your life. Like I hope you're ready. Like I'm going to kind of ruin flying for you, just so you know, with this trip.
I'm fired up,
Yeah.
It'll be a ton of fun. So I want to get real deep into all that in just a minute. But first I want to talk to the viewers. So you mentioned that when you got involved, you weren't some business owner making a ton of money, right? You were kind of at the time, maybe, I don't know, like a normal salary type, situation, right?
Yep.
So for somebody watching who maybe is just working a 9 to 5, and maybe they make, I don't know, 70 grand a year, maybe they make 100, maybe they make 200 grand, maybe they're a high paid W-2 employee, right? Where should they begin to let's start with what like specific credit cards should they go get, and how should they start structuring their finances to start stacking the points so that eventually they could take a trip like we're talking about?
For sure. So I'll try to keep this as simple as possible. But just like I was telling you earlier, man, I was making in between 70 and 90 grand, during my 20s when I was an executive chef, which, hey, that paid the bills. It gave me everything I needed at the time to do what I wanted to do. And then obviously the points. But what I would say in terms of the big picture is, you don't need to make a ton of money to play this game. But what I will say is the less spend there is, the more important the strategy is. So we want to make sure that we're earning multiples on everything we are buying. So let's say we are only making 60, 70K a year. How can we maximize all the points earning potential from that? Now, you're making into the millions a year, the business is spending the millions of the year. Do you need to be as strategic with your credit cards? Do you need to have multiple layers to it? Probably not, because you're earning a ton of points. So I guess like big picture here is, hey, anybody can do this. The less spend we have, the more important your strategy is. So what I always like to tell people, and whether it's you're 9-to-5er making W-2 wages, or it's a business multi-business owner spending hundreds of thousands or millions, is the simplest way to do it is you have to ask yourself, what are the 2, maybe 3 things that I spend the most money on every year, whether that's as a household, whether that's as a business. And let's just say for me, it's pretty simple. It's travel and food. I would say most people, food is probably going to be one of those top spends. So what are the best credit cards in terms of earning points for those highest levels of spend? So for example, like a travel card, the best travel card in my opinion is going to be the Chase Sapphire Reserve card. That card is going to earn us for a minimum of 3x all the way up to potentially 10x points on travel purchases. I don't need to get into the details of how you book it, but basically 3x to 10x multiple on our spend.
So for every dollar you spend,
exactly,
you will earn up anywhere from 3 points to 10.
Exactly.
On the Chase Sapphire Reserve.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So now all of a sudden, okay, boom, we've got our travel card. We've got 3x to 10x multiples there. Let's say that now we have food as our next biggest spend. Well, what's the card that's going to earn me the most amount of points for my food? Well, an Amex Gold card will earn you 4x points, including groceries. So restaurants, delivery apps, groceries. So now we've got our 2 highest spending categories where we're ripping 3x to 10x or 4x points. And then that last piece, like I said, could you add layers to this? Absolutely. Maybe gas is one, maybe there's some other categories, but in terms of simplicity, I would throw in one more card that I kind of call like a blanket card. Okay. And these are our core cards, if you will. That blanket card is going to be for everything else. If it's not travel, if it's not food, all my other purchases will go on here. And so there's a couple cards that would fit that, but like the Capital One Venture or the Capital One Venture X is going to earn you a flat 2x on all your purchases. So you don't have to think about what you're buying, but the idea here is, and this is where a lot of people kind of miss the ball here, where maybe someone's using an Amex Platinum. Everybody likes the Amex Platinum, right? It's shiny, it looks fancy, looks like you're a boss. But the person who uses the Amex Platinum for everything that I just listed out, okay, you're going to earn 5x points on flights. That's great. That's really good. But you're earning 1x on everything else. So if you have your $100,000 in spend, you're earning essentially 1x point on all of that with your Amex Platinum. But now you've got a very simple strategy where all of a sudden this $100,000 in spend, that could look like 300,000, 400,000 points. You very easily 3x, 4x your points earnings by just being very strategic and a simple strategy. I mean, like I said, if it's food, use the Amex Gold. Like you can train your brain pretty quick to kind of execute on that, but that's the biggest piece for, because like I said, you can't redeem points unless you're earning points. And the idea is we don't want to just take one trip. If we can build our core lineup of cards and use them effectively, we're on autopilot. This is happening every single year. Hopefully you'll continue to make more money, but it's like, boom, you get this set up and you know damn well that every single year you got 500,000 points coming in. Where are we going? What are we doing? Let's use them. They're going to come back. But that's just kind of the biggest piece. And like I said, whether you're a personal or business owner, it's, what are those 2-3 things that I spend the most money on? What's the best card for those items? But I would say that's just kind of like the basics of, I call it like optimizing your spend. So that's like the key kind of foundational piece there.
And would you recommend for people that they time applying for the card when the card is running a promotion?
Yeah.
So they can get that initial, like I think I've seen, is it the Chase Sapphire Reserve that'll do like 100K if you spend like $4,000 or whatever? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So essentially, all these cards, there is going to be that sign up bonus. So those are great, but remember, it's a one-time hit. So it's a nice little inbound. But what I would say is, strategically, yeah, you could kind of wait around for one where like those bonuses might be 60,000 points, but then, once a year they might increase it to 100,000. So definitely something you want to consider as well. But let's just say, you're the guy with your platinum card, right? And you're waiting for the Amex Gold to have a higher bonus. Well, if you spend 9 months earning 1x point per dollar on your platinum card, waiting for this gold card sign-up bonus, well, if you just would have got the gold card and still got your 60,000 points, the points you would have earned off the food while you were waiting would have been greater than the sign-up bonus. So, with those bonuses, because trust me, early on, like I was sign-up bonus king. Like I didn't have a ton of spend. I was like, okay, I'm going to get this card, get that card. But once you get your core cards, like I kind of laid out, once you have your spend dialed in, and this is where a lot of people go wrong too, that is when you go chase the sign-up bonuses. That is when you can wait for that elevated offer to come through because you know that, hey, these are my main cards that I'm going to be using. Oh, well, hey, you know what? The Marriott card just came out with, a 5 free nights when you spend $3,000.
Yep.
Awesome. Go grab it. Hit your spend on it. But then that card's growing in the drawer. We're not putting more spend on that. We're reverting back to our core cards that are earning us these transferable points. So the sign-up bonus strategy, go chase them, wait for a good offer. You can look to see like, hey, what were some of the previous sign-up bonus offers on some of these cards?
Yep.
But that's where a lot of people you can do it however you want. Get your core cards lined up, then you go play the sign-up bonus party. And yeah, if you can wait and hit a big one like that, like that Marriott card, like I mentioned right now, it's 5 free nights. I think it's up to like 50,000 points a night. I mean, you could go do a pretty crazy trip that might run, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 if you use those points the right way. So absolutely lucrative, assuming you build your foundational lineup first.
Sure. Talk to me about the worst credit cards that you would not get. Like you've seen people get them and they're just not good for getting points. There's really no value, yet you see time and time again, there's got to be a card where you've seen people get this card, whatever it might be, and you're like, dude, that's just not a good card. Like, why do you have that card? Like, is there one that you can think of?
Yeah, I get that. I look at a lot of, I talk with a lot of people, obviously, about their cards and the travel and all this and that. I'll kind of break it down a little bit further, but the biggest one that makes me cringe that I see so often is, sorry if anybody has one of these, it's Delta credit cards. Okay, so kind of what I was mentioning earlier. So I'm talking about like these Amex points, these Chase points, Capital One. There's all different types of points too. So we want to make sure that we're earning the types of points that we can do things like we did on your trip. So we've got transferable points. Those are the good ones. We've got cards that earn airline miles. We have cards that earn hotel points. There's cash back. There's fixed value. There's all these different types, but these transferable points, these are the only ones that allow us to really extract that additional value, get that 4x, that 5x. So kind of back to that Delta card scenario. If I have a Delta card, okay, we're earning some points, great. But now all of a sudden I'm stuck driving down the Delta lane. I can't use these miles for anything else besides booking through Delta's award program. Well, if I have an Amex card, not only am I going to earn more points off my spend, if for some strange reason it actually makes sense to transfer to Delta, you can take your Amex points and turn them into a Delta mile. Or you can turn them into 20 other different types of airline miles. So I would just say in general, we don't want cashback cards. We don't want like cards like Bank of America. There are cards that offer travel rewards, but they're kind of at that fixed value, kind of like going through Amex Travel. It says, hey, you can get this much for your points. So we just want to avoid anything that's not a transferable point, basically. So airline cards in particular are like my biggest. We just want to avoid those.
Yeah, because it probably very rarely, correct me if I'm wrong, makes sense to go through the card issuer to book travel. Like, so for example, like Amex, right? Like you were saying, like, had I booked that same trip through Amex, it would have costed, I think, like almost $7 million.
Exactly.
And so have you ever seen it make sense to book through the card issuer, like in terms of travel?
Yeah, so actually it does make sense in a lot of scenarios, but that's after we've made the decision that, hey, it doesn't make sense to use points for this trip. If if I'm going to be paying cash for this trip, maybe we've done some research, maybe there's no flights available, maybe it's just a poor value or, whatever other reason, but like that Chase Sapphire Reserve, for example, think of these Amex Travel, Chase Travel, think of those as they're third-party travel agencies. They're just like Booking.com. They're just like Kayak, where they're going to incentivize you to book through Chase Travel because you'll earn more points when we're paying cash because they're obviously getting a cut. So that Chase Sapphire Reserve, I could go to delta.com right now, book a flight with cash, and I'll earn my 3x points. That's great. Or if I booked my flights, that same Delta flight through Chase Travel, I'm going to earn 5x points. So, it's always good to book direct, but at the end of the day, you're still booking your flight, but taking that 3x to 5x. And then with hotels for that card, for example, I could go to Marriott.com, pay with my reserve card. I got my 3x points again. If I book hotels through Chase Travel, 10x. 10x. So sometimes it could, the flights are generally priced around the same for cash. Hotels, a lot of times you will find cheaper rates for those hotels outside of Chase Travel, so you have to kind of look at it. But in terms of booking travel through the portals, essentially the only time you want to really do that is when we're focusing on how many points we're going to earn, not redeem them.
Yeah.
We want to earn those points, but when we redeem them, as you kind of saw with your trip, we want to take them and send them to other places because what that does is, we got that fixed value. We're stuck with this fixed value of the point, 1 cent per point. 100,000 points is $1,000. Yep. That's great. You got something. Or we can take that 100,000 points, maybe transfer it over to Air France or Flying Blue. You can book a round trip business class flight from the US to Europe for 100,000 points because we're booking off their award chart. So now we've taken that 1 cent per point, that fixed value. We're now leveraging the airline's award charts, where that might be a, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 flight for that exact same 100,000. So that's just kind of like the key piece there where, yes, you can use the portals if we're going to pay cash, but when it comes time to redeem, unless you're sitting on tens of millions of points and you're like, oh, I don't give, I got more coming in. We want to earn the points within the banks, but we want to send them out. That's how those multiples really start to come in.
Hey, really quick, I'm sure you already know, but I've done over 2,500 wholesale deals in my career, and me and my team consistently do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals a day. If you're looking to get better at wholesaling, or maybe you're brand new, you've never wholesaled a deal, I would actually love to coach you. I would love to mentor you, and I would love for you to be a part of our education program. All you have to do is go to www.flippinsimple.com, or you can find a link in the description down below and book a strategy session with my team to see if you would be a good fit for our coaching program. Again, this is our exact strategy and formula of how we are actually able to go out every single day and do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals a day. Nobody's talking about what we're doing, and I really look forward to coaching you and mentoring you. So again, go to www.flippinsimple.com. Now let's just go ahead and get back to the show. Talk to me a bit about the award charts, and the airlines. Like how does that all work? Like I've always kind of wondered, right? Like how do they make money on it? And you might not know the answer to that. Maybe I'm sure you do, but like how does it work? And then how do you know? Like I remember one time, this is obviously I'm not knowledgeable, right? But I tried booking a Cathay, I think it was a Cathay Pacific flight based on the award chart, and I couldn't find anything available for like 5 years. Like I gave up eventually, right? And I called you. Do it for me, But like, how does that all work?
Yeah, so I guess I'm going to try to think of the best way to attack this at first. So essentially, when we're talking about these award charts and stuff like that, or these transfer partners, like I'm mentioning, Amex is a Delta partner. Amex, with Flying Blue. Think of those as the airline's award program. Okay, so don't think of those so much as the airline you might actually be flying on. We're transferring these points into their award program. Okay, each of these different award programs really kind of do things their own way. Okay, and there's kind of like a second layer of partners. So Amex has these airlines that are their partners, but then once they're there, there's a second tier of partners, and this is where that next layer of strategy comes in, where there's the Star Alliance, there's the One World Alliance, and there's SkyTeam. It's American, British Airways, Cathay Pacific, then we've got United, Air Canada. Well, what that means is I can't transfer my Amex points to United. I can transfer them to Air Canada. I can book a flight actually flying on United through Air Canada's award program because they're partners in the Star Alliance. So it's almost like the second tier of partners. So with that being said, maybe I'm trying to book a United flight. Maybe I'm going, from the US to Europe. There might be 3 or 4 different partners of Amex that I can transfer my points to book this exact same flight. But Air Canada might charge 55,000 points. Avianca Life Miles might charge 70,000 points. So all these airlines are also going to price these flights differently. So it's not only about, can I transfer them? It's like, actually, who's going to be the best program to transfer this to based off how they price it, because they're all different.
Yeah.
So that's kind of that next piece where, it adds into, well, you can book it for 50,000 versus 70,000, but then how do you know which is the best piece? So that's kind of the one side of, these transfer partners and these award charts. So then kind of back to your thing where, Amex Travel is great because we can go there, we can pick any flight we want, right?
Yep.
And so many people come up to me, they're like, oh, Tommy, yep. Here, I found this flight on Google Flights. This is the one I want. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But the award charts, guys, essentially most airlines, they've got these fixed rates where, hey, US to Europe, we're going to charge 55,000 miles if they release the seats for points. So essentially what you'll see is either, hey, nothing's available, or you'll see flights that are 200,000, 300,000, 400,000 points. But we're looking for the flights that are those standard rates, those saver rates. And those are the ones that are hard. That's where the 10x value comes in. That's where you get the most bang for your buck. So then that next piece is like, okay, what kind of aircraft is it? How many seats are on that? How many seats are occupied right now? What are the odds of this business class seat actually opening up?
Right.
So it's kind of doing some research back there, but this is like a good tidbit too. Everyone panics. Like, oh my God, I don't have a flight booked yet. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Like, it's going to be more expensive. Generally, as you get closer to departure, cash rates tend to go up, right? With points, though, it's the opposite.
Really?
It's the opposite. The closer to departure we get, the more likely you are to have these seats open up at the saver rates, the standard rates. So if you think about it, at the end of the day, the airline wants somebody's butt in the seat, right? If they can't bring in any more revenue, an airline mile is a debt or a liability to the airline. It's owed to the customers. So if we can't bring in revenue, let's get somebody's butt in the seat and lower the debt or the liability due to the customers. So most of my flights, I'm booking, 6 weeks out, 4 weeks out, 3 weeks out. And then even with your trip, I know we're about a little over a month out now, but that was like perfect timing where I knew that we're going to have some availability. I think we're going to be able to do this in one fall swoop. But like I said, I could go on and on about all the different layers to that. But key takeaway is it's never too late to want to go do something with points. And it's actually going to be advantageous to try to book something a little more last minute or spontaneous or just kind of be flexible.
Sure.
I think I covered. I covered that question.
Great.
I think
So let's say your average person, they're going to attempt to do it on their own. Okay, let's just say hypothetically. How would they figure out what you just said? So like, let's say they have a destination in mind. So they want to fly from here to Dubai. Okay. And they know that they want to go in, 2 months or whatever, right? Like, where do they begin to try to see, okay, what different airlines actually fly to Dubai, and then the different networks of airlines that you talked about, and then where do I send the points, and like, where do they begin on all that?
So like you kind of hit it on the head there. It's not about searching and all this stuff. We want to spend our time figuring out what we're even looking for. Because otherwise you're just going to be aimlessly searching. You're going to be spending time. You're not going to come up with anything. And guess what? You're going to give up. But if we spend our time figuring out exactly what we're looking for, now we have a very narrow and efficient search. So kind of like with you, okay, I want to go to Dubai. Okay, what airlines fly to Dubai? Okay, well, Emirates is one, obviously. That's going to be the big one. Okay, well, what airports within the U.S. does Emirates fly to? Unfortunately, they don't fly to Phoenix. So if you're typing in Phoenix to Dubai,
You can't get there.
you're not going to get an Emirates flight.
Yeah.
So, and people will, that's where they'll get stuck. I'm trying to do this. So you almost kind of have to deconstruct it. But if we just stay on the Emirates piece, it's okay. I figured out Dubai, Emirates flies there nonstop from the States. That next piece is going to be, okay, you know, which airports does Emirates fly to? Maybe you're lucky and you do live in, you know, New York, Chicago, LA. I mean, the bigger hub airports, or like we did with your trip. Okay, well, hey, we want to fly Emirates, but I can't out of Phoenix. So when I was looking at this, I'm like, okay, where can I get Austin to? That's just, you know, as close as possible, still having the right aircraft type and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I can fly Austin to Houston. 2-hour flight, you know, $100 on Southwest, easy peasy. But now all of a sudden, when I'm searching, I can flights to Dubai on Emirates will actually show up because there is a route on there. Okay, so it's kind of like breaking that down, or almost like deconstructing the trip a little bit, especially when you're like trying to get a specific redemption. Like we knew we wanted to fly Emirates. There's obviously multiple other ways, but you kind of deconstruct it a little bit by, like I said, putting those pieces of, you know, what are my options, where are they flying to, and then kind of going from there.
Yeah.
You know, another piece too, like beyond, let's say you're not set on a certain airline or a certain product. You know, there are tools and things like that out there now that, like, you know, there's a site called point.me. Okay, and point.me is basically, it's kind of like a Google Flights for points, and essentially it's going to run. Now, it's definitely not perfect. It definitely doesn't have all the airlines, and if you're not plugging the right information into it, like we just talked about, it's not going to get you anything. But, you know, you could very simply type in the same thing where you could go, hey, let's stick with Houston because that is a huge airport. There's lots of flights international going out of there. You could type in Houston to Dubai, and this tool will actually run a search of a good amount of the airline programs and show you kind of real-time availability of these flights where it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe you could fly Qatar Airways. I mean, there's still going to be, hey, is the flight available or not? But in terms of the tools and stuff that are out there now that make this a lot easier, there's some tools out there, but like I said, it still goes back to the tools are only as powerful as the information you put into it. So if you're
It's
not
like ChatGPT.
right,
You give it the right prompt.
it literally, that's exactly it.
You know?
So, like I said, it's a lot more out there. That's a lot more accessible for anybody and everybody than it was before. But regardless of the tools, you still need to spend some time doing the thinking, get the right information in there. Because, like I said, otherwise you're going to have these points. You're going to give up and say this is a scam, this is BS, or just redeem your points to the travel portal, and now you have no points left.
Right.
But once you learn it and once you kind of get the basic ideas of it and like how to go about thinking it, the same kind of concepts are going to apply every time you're booking these trips. So it might be, you know, it might be Europe, might be Asia, but the thought process of the information you need to think through in order to get to that end result is going to be the same each and every time we go to do this. So as you learn, as you do it, and then ultimately execute, you know, oh man, when I did that Dubai trip, like I was doing this, like, okay, I'm going to think that same way, but for Europe this time. And you will begin to learn. And like I said, there are big shortcuts now with these tools that are out there.
What is there a name for what you were mentioning about the like get as close as you like? You know how like I'm going to Houston.
Yeah.
Like, do you have a name for that?
Yes. So that is what we call a positioning flight.
There you go. Yep.
Okay. So positioning flights essentially are. So what happens with these points flights is essentially, you know, we're concerned about that big long flight. That's the one where we don't want to be sitting in economy, right? But let's just say that first segment or that back end segment, having that part of the search or part of the flight, that long flight might be available for $60K. But then this first little segment, which like I said might be an hour and a half flight to Houston, if that one isn't, you know, available at those standard rates, now all of a sudden that 60,000 mile long flight, that whole trip might price out at, you know, 200,000. So what I kind of mentioned, like deconstructing it a little bit, when you do that, we want to focus on finding the availability for the long flight first. Then sure, we could still search to see, hey, can I actually start in Phoenix and have this price out the same? If you can, great. More often than not, you won't. So it's like kind of deconstructing that a little bit but focusing on the long trips. So essentially, guys, positioning airports, or positioning flights, it's you getting to a bigger airport.
Yep.
JFK, LA, Chicago, Houston, San Fran. Those are kind of like your main big hubs, but the more flights that are going out, the more seats there are, the more routes there are, the more ultimate, gives you the most opportunities to redeem those points. Like with Phoenix, for example, you can fly to Europe nonstop from Phoenix, but I think British Airways flies. I think Air France just announced a flight, but the odds of you finding a point seat on the only route going to Europe out of Phoenix, good luck. You might find something very last minute, doubt it. Maybe wintertime you might be able to find something, but flying out of JFK, there's 35 flights a day just to London. Now you got 50 times the seats, 50 times the routes, so it's like getting yourself in a, literally positioning yourself to have the highest chance of actually scoring one of these seats, and that's the huge difference maker.
Yeah, and that would apply all over the world, right? On the front or back end of your trip.
Exactly.
Getting that positioning flight, because it's also going to apply in Dubai, it's going to apply in Thailand, in Bangkok, in Bali, in Australia, in, Africa, right? Like, it's like, okay, I know I want to go there, and I know I'm coming from here, but where is closest to here and where is closest to there?
Right.
Where that big airline will fly, and then I'll figure out the little piece here and there.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, hit it on the head. Let's just say this, if you guys are trying to go to Europe, it doesn't matter where you're actually starting from or where ultimately you're going to be ending. Your mission is to get from USA to Europe on a lie flat seat and have a great freaking flight. You fly into London, guess what? You can be in Amsterdam in 45 minutes and pay $30 for a Ryanair flight. So like I said, it's not about that final destination. It's almost like, hey, I need to start in this region and I need to get to this region, because that's where people really kind of blow it. We're like, well, at the end of the day, we're just booking the ticket differently. You're still starting here and you're still ending at the same place. So it's just booking it in a little different way. And that's where people they're like, wait, what? Like, this doesn't make sense. But I'm like, are we still taking 2 flights? Yes. We just book them separately. The end result's the exact same. So it's a major, major strategy. Just figure out that long flight first, find that deal, and then figure out getting yourself to that final destination or getting yourself, to that positioning airport where, hey, you might even be able to use points there too. But the idea is, like I said, that $5,000 business class seat, that's one we're not going to pay out of pocket for.
Right.
That's where we want to use the points. $100 positioning flight, no big deal, right?
Yep.
So that's kind of like just the overview of how to kind of go about thinking about it if you're trying to do this on your own.
Which is super cool. Yeah, I mean, I think phenomenal advice, obviously, for anybody. Talk to me about airlines in particular. What are your favorite airlines? I'm sure it's because how many countries have you been to?
I've been to 79.
79,
and I've flown just about. There's a couple products that's still on my hit list, but I've hit. I mean, damn near close to every one of those insane first class flights.
We'll throw your Instagram up on the screen right now. I mean, you've flown some wild. I mean, the pictures that you have on your Instagram, Travel Like Tommy. I've never seen anything like it. I want to eventually do what you've been able to do.
Yeah.
So talk to me. I mean, I'm sure it has to be difficult, right? 79 countries, almost every airline in the world, first class, business class, everything you can imagine. Can you even pick top 1, 2, 3? I mean,
it's tough, man. It's definitely tough. And I think just kind of going back to with what I've done my focus on with the travel is I want to do the coolest stuff you could possibly do. I mean, obviously there's value plays and this and that. I'm actually trying to be a little more focused on, do I need to take the flight that's 3 times longer because it's a cool product, or it's like, hey, can I get here? But I was just, I almost had a checklist. I'm like, I got to fly this one. I got to fly this one. And I would say the coolest, maybe my top 3, I would say is, Emirates, obviously. They do have 2 different first class cabins. But just that Emirates experience is just absolutely over the top.
Yeah.
Like you said, you're going to be on the A380 where even in business class, you've got the onboard bar back there. Eli and I actually had last year, we booked almost 25 or 30 of us on that A380.
No way.
And we took over we used 1 million something points, but we had 25 or 26 of us all at the bar
Wow.
at 35,000 feet. So that in itself, that's kind of like anybody playing the points and miles game needs to take a flight on the Emirates A380 and have a champagne at the bar. So that's a must.
You just hang out back there?
You just hang out back there.
Yeah.
They got the flight attendants sitting at the bar. They'll let you pour yourself a drink too. They'll have snacks, but it's like, yeah, it's cool. And plus to be able to get out of your seat as well, because especially that Dubai flight, that's a long one. You've got a long travel day.
15-hour flight.
It's a long one.
Yeah.
So I would just say Emirates in general, business or first class, that's a must do.
Which one's better on the Emirates before you go to number 2? Is it the A380 or the 7? Is it the 777?
Yeah, so there's the 777. They have one first class product that's called the Game Changer.
Okay.
They only have it on 8 of their aircraft though. Emirates has a ton of aircraft, right? So only 8 of them have this Game Changer first class. So that one's epic in the sense of it's fully enclosed, floor to ceiling. The seat is, I think it's like a zero gravity, like aerospace chair. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. But those aircrafts, and this is where like that av geek kind of nerd stuff comes in, not just the points, but that seat's probably a little bit cooler, but it doesn't have the bar in the lounge. It doesn't have the onboard shower. A380, okay, maybe the seat's still amazing. The seat's maybe not quite as nice and as private, but it's got the onboard bar. It's got the, taking a shower in the sky. I mean, come on, that's like a pretty cool experience. So that's kind of like that next level of information where when you're booking a flight, you want to make sure you know exactly what you're booking. And just like we were selecting your seats, I was like, okay, hold on, let me double check the aircraft because I want to make sure that we got these seats that are close to each other. Because there'd be nothing worse than like booking this Emirates flight, thinking that you're getting the Game Changer seat, and then show up and be like, "What? This isn't what I booked."
Yeah.
Because you were able to make the booking, you found the flight, you did all the things right. You should be excited, and then like to walk onto the plane and be like, "Oh, wait, this isn't what I booked." But I would say I'd still go with the A380 over the Game Changer.
Yeah.
Because it's just got other parts of the experience that the other one doesn't have. So Emirates, everyone's got to do it. It's a must do. The other two would probably be Singapore Airlines. They've also got one of those A380s, guys. Those are those double-decker planes. So they've got a fully enclosed suite where they've got double beds that come out of the wall. They've got like a Dr. Evil, like moving recliner chair and stuff like that. They're serving you Krug. I mean, you're getting caviar. I mean, it's just like this holy crap.
I heard Emirates is unlimited caviar now. Did you hear that?
Unlimited caviar, unlimited Dom P.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you just like, I'm all about getting the most bang for my buck. So just in terms of the dollar amount of like just the champagne you might drink on one of these, especially a 15-hour flight. I mean, I could pretty easily put back a bottle or two of champagne, let's just say.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, I'm like, man, this is a $350 bottle of champagne that, hey, I'm never buy this for myself, but you're telling me you can just kind of keep refilling me? Like, okay,
I'll take
sweet.
it.
And that's where that big difference between business class and like true first class is. That's where you start talking, yep, that's the caviar, that's the lobster. I mean, that's the on-demand, whatever you want, whenever you want. And then, like I said, you start getting into the, the bubbles and some of the alcohol selections. It's like absolutely over the top. But that's that big difference with like business class compared to first class. But yeah, so I would say the Singapore A380 first class is probably number 2. And then I also just flew Etihad, who's also another Middle Eastern airline, just like Emirates. They have an A380 as well, double decker, dual suites. Like if you're traveling with like, your wife, your girlfriend, you got, like I said, you got double beds coming out of the wall. You got the doors. I mean, it's just, honestly, anything on those double decker planes is just a totally cool experience. But recap, Emirates, Etihad, Singapore, those are my top 3. Not only for the the hard product, like being the seat and the aircraft, but then the service and the food. And like I said, it's not just a flight, man. I mean, it's like it's a full-on experience.
From the moment you get to the airport.
Exactly.
Just correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you book with points or cash. You're on points. You're first class. You get to go to the lounge.
Oh yeah.
I think what is it? Emirates. They'll pick you up from your hotel. They'll drive you to the airport in like a black car. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. So there's some chauffeur scenarios. They actually did just kind of cut those back where they used to do those on points bookings as well. I think there might still be some scenarios, but either way, if you're flying Emirates first class, specifically on cash at least, they'll have a chauffeur come pick you up. I mean, but essentially it's like you walk into the airport, I've got TSA, I've got Clear, I've got all those things, but like all those inconveniences, like you're not waiting in line to check in, you're not paying for any bags, and you're going to get escorted to the lounge. Actually, at JFK, you can actually board the Emirates flights from the Emirates Lounge.
No way.
Which is a pretty cool thing. So, like I said, the trip itself, it starts the second you walk into the airport when you're able to, kind of have these experiences, and especially book them off flights. It's not like, oh man, we got a 24-hour travel day. We got to sit in economy, and like you couldn't pay me to sit 24 hours on an economy flight to the other side of the world these days.
I've done it one time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did my time. I mean, I definitely did. I probably did, 250,000, 300,000 air miles back of the bus. Usually got lucky and avoided the middle seat, but I absolutely put my time in on the back of the plane. But now I know that I don't ever want to go back there.
If you're currently wholesaling real estate and you aren't using a CRM, then you're doing it wrong and you're leaving a ton of money on the table. We are one of the largest wholesalers in the nation, and by far the #1 tool that we use every single day is a phenomenal CRM, right? And a CRM is obviously a customer relationship management tool that will keep track of all of your leads. It'll follow up with people on your behalf. Even if you have a 9-to-5, right? A good CRM will be working for you while you're working at your job. So when you come home, you have a bunch of people to talk to buy their property, okay? Now, obviously, we have a CRM. It is called SimpleSend, and all you have to do is go to www.simplesend.com to check it out. It is by far my favorite CRM. We built it out over the years, and it will literally do everything you need it to do to become a phenomenal wholesaler. So go to www.simplesend, check it out, and I'm telling you, you will not regret it. No, for sure. If you can avoid it, don't do it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You just got to play the game, right? Like get the points. Anybody can do it, and I think there's a huge misconception that like your average person can't do what we're talking about, right? Like all the way from even getting the card. It's like, I think there's even something about like the Amex, right? Where like I've seen people where, you pull out a gold card or a platinum, right? At a restaurant or whatever. And people look at you like it's the black card. Like, it's like, I mean, I get it. It's like a little bit fancier than maybe a normal credit card, but anybody can go get that credit card.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like you have to, like a black card, they have to choose you, right? Pretty much. Like,
right.
I mean, do you have a black card, by the way?
I don't.
Okay, I don't have a black.
We're working on it, but but also
I don't even know how to get one.
So it's invite only. It's generally like at least like $500,000 in spend, or you got to have a plug-in Amex, which I may or may not have.
Yeah.
But just like, okay, yeah, the black card, that's the flashiest, sexiest card you could have. But guess what? The guy who puts the gold card down at the restaurant versus the black card, that's the smart guy.
Yeah.
Because the black card's not a great points earning card.
I didn't even know
It's loaded with perks and benefits. It's got some like supplemental things. I'm not saying it's not a good card, but from the points earning perspective, Mr. Flex slapped the black card, even the platinum card. The guy who puts the gold card down to pay for dinner, that's the smart guy in the room. Or, well, I mean, if you got a black card, you're probably not too concerned about your points because things are
flying private.
Things are probably going pretty well.
You're on a you're on a Gulf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even with Amex, because I kind of messed my credit up a little bit in college, or I didn't have pristine credit, let's just say. So when I got this at 22, I had to spend some time like fixing my credit up a little bit. So I just got a Capital One card that, I don't think it was a secured card, but it was just a credit card. It wasn't earning any points. And I put every like penny on this card for, I don't know, maybe 6 to 8 months, every 2 weeks. So, I got paid my card down completely. And essentially, I think I was right in that, like that 680-ish, like not quite 700, but, it was in a place where I'm like, all right, well, let's give this a try. And I got approved for an Amex with a sub 700 credit score.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm 800 plus now, but in that early on stages where I didn't have a huge credit profile, I didn't have a lot of history, to be able to start getting into it, ideally you want to get to a 700 score, but to get into this thing, you don't need to have a perfect credit score, but if you can understand what goes into credit, it's very easy to build your score up from there, because everything we've just talked about, if you don't have good credit, none of this other stuff even comes into play.
Yeah.
And not only have good credit, but maintain good credit. That's like the key foundational piece to this too. So if it's not where it needs to be, you got to get it there. And if you have it there, You got to keep it there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
How does somebody, if they're watching right now, is it, say somebody has a 600 credit score, what can they do? What action items can they take right now to make it better?
Yeah. So, your credit's going to consist of a few different kind of pieces to the pie, if you will. There's number of accounts, there's the age, your payment history, recent inquiries and stuff like that. So there's a few factors. Some of them take more time to have impacts and stuff like that. But, and this is one like major misconception as well too. It's like, Tommy, you've got all these credit cards, your credit must suck. But the more things that are in your credit, the thicker your credit profile is, the better your score is. So it's like 30 credit cards. Oh man, he's probably got the worst credit in the world. When in reality, it's the opposite. So one is you want to focus on actually starting to build that credit profile. Maybe you've got, maybe you got some student loans, you've got a mortgage, a car payment, that's type of credit. Adding on some of these credit cards, we want to work on a number of accounts. We want to have accounts that are starting to get some age on them. So like you don't want to just get a credit card and close it a year later. You want to keep that card.
You never want to close, really, in a perfect world, right?
You generally don't. And even if it's a card that's like a high annual fee one, you want to maintain and keep all that credit history. It's like having a report card. If you got an A+ in gym class, which hopefully most of you guys did, well, why would we want to pull that off? Let's keep it on there. It's not, just put the card in the drawer. We want to keep that credit history. So some key things that I would say, let's just say somebody's maybe just fresh out of college or, early 20s, something like that, not much on the credit profile. One thing you can do is you can be added as an authorized user to someone else. So let's just say your pops, he's got, great credit. Maybe he's got a card that maybe it's 10 years old. Maybe it's got, $15,000, $20,000 credit line on there, perfect payment history. Like you're checking all the boxes, like, hey, that's a great credit account. Well, if you're in good spirits with the old man, your old man could add you as an authorized user to his card. You've now inherited a credit account that's 10 plus years old, it's got perfect payment history, a $20,000 credit line. You don't even need to have the card. It doesn't, the mail or the card could come in the mail, you can cut it up. There's no impact to the person who's adding you as an authorized user, unless you actually physically get the card to go run up a giant bill, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of being able to, if we don't have a lot on the credit, to be able to get added as an authorized user will be a massive, massive boost. Because now, like I said, your credit line's probably doubled or tripled. Maybe you've got 2 or 3 accounts instead of one. So that's a huge piece. But you only want to get added as an authorized user to somebody that's in good standing.
Yeah, for sure.
If somebody's got late payments, like it could negatively impact you as well. The other one, and this is one that we can tweak every single month. So it takes a long time for your credit age to evolve. It takes time to add all these payments on there, but every single month there's one piece to this that gets factored in, and that's what we call utilization. This is going to change every month. And what utilization is it's not only amongst all of your credit accounts, but also on each individual one. How much credit are you being extended on each account, and also collectively, how much of it are you using? Okay. So let's just say we have a $10,000 credit line total, and our card statement closes at the end of the month. Got a $5,000 balance. Okay. We're at a 50% utilization. You might have every intention to pay it off. We don't owe the banks yet. It's not due until next month.
Yeah.
There's no interest. We got 4 weeks to pay it. It's all good. But to the credit bureaus, you owe somebody $5,000 and you're using half the credit you're being extended. So I've mentioned 2 dates: statement date, statement close date, and due date. Okay. They said the due date, we don't owe anybody anything until that day. But when this stuff your utilization gets reported to the bureaus, it's on your statement close date. So
people don't even know about that.
It's such a simple thing that we could, maybe we got some cash flow things. I mean, you can really kind of tweak this on a monthly basis, move some kind of things around. But essentially what I do is across, all the cards in here, all my statement close dates are for the end of the month.
Yeah.
So let's just say, what are we, February now? So February 29th, all my cards are going to close. So what I do on the 27th, 28th, I go in and I pay my cards down. Statement closed. Guess what? I'm keeping a sub 5% utilization across the board at all times, to where that's what keeps that score over 800. And this happened a few months ago. I think I had an Emirates credit card that I don't really use, but there was a scenario where I actually bought some airline miles. That's a whole nother topic, but had a $5,000 line on it. The charge was like $3,000. And since I don't ever use the card, I didn't pay it by the statement close date like I normally do. So this $3,000 charge, I had a 60% utilization on this one card.
Out of 30.
Out of 30. So I've
Right.
got, $300,000 plus personal credit line. My overall utilization was like, 2%. But since this one individual card had a 60% utilization, my score dropped 70 points.
Wow.
70.
That's insane.
But guess what?
The month after, it went right back up.
Right back up.
Yeah.
So that's something that you can tweak specifically. So the biggest takeaways: thin profile, get added as an authorized user. The older the account, the better. The bigger the line, the better. And obviously, someone who's responsible and paying it right. So thin profile, get added as an authorized user. Watch your utilization, guys. Figure out what that statement close date is, and when that statement closes, consider that your due date as well.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to be able to keep and maintain this credit at that high level at all times. And you can continue to add new accounts. You can continue to build that profile. But those two pieces are kind of like just kind of core kind of things you have to do.
Does it ever, who does it make sense for it to have 30? Like, is it just guys like you and me? Is it just people who know, like, this is what they do for a living? Like, does it ever make sense for anybody watching to go get 30 credit cards like you have in that?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things we can do with credit. And like, I know you've talked to my buddy Jack McCall on here. He's all about.
He's been on the pod.
Yeah. So, there's the credit stacking piece. There's the 0% in the funding. So, I mean, there's that piece there. With these credit cards in particular. Now, of those 30 that are in there, probably 15 of them I'm just keeping in there because I'm keeping that on my credit. I have cards that are 6, 7, 8 years old that I don't want to pull off my credit. So I really don't have too much use for them besides those are major anchors to my credit and I value those. So maybe some of the cards are no annual fees. Some of them do have like, $99, but what I would tell most people is, you don't need 30 cards. I'm kind of crazy, but what I will say is, I talked about those core cards, those foundational cards. So it's having those 3, maybe 4 cards that are your key kind of everyday users. But then there's going to be scenarios where I call them like supplemental cards or secondary cards, where just by holding that card, I talked to you about that Marriott card, where I'm like, Austin, I want you to get this Marriott card because it's going to come with automatic platinum status. I don't want you to spend on that card, but by holding that card, now all of a sudden we've got elite status. We're going to get upgrades. We're going to get free breakfast. We're going to be earning more points. There's several hotel cards that provide a crap ton of value, free nights. All those extra cards, guys. It's basically like you're either getting them for a sign-up bonus or there's some sort of perk or benefit to that card. Maybe it's lounge. Maybe it's other kind of lounge access, free nights. I mean, there's all sorts of pieces, but I like to say, hey, get your 3 or 4 core cards. Get a hotel card that gives you elite status and make that your new kind of primary.
Yep.
It's like Marriott's kind of my main, but like, Hilton, Hyatt as well. And then maybe you don't travel a ton to where you have like airline status. Well, then, then grab an airline card so that your bags are paid for. Maybe you get, group 3 boarding instead of group 5. There's some little perks and benefits that will either save you some cash in the long run or heighten the travel experience. So those, I would say, great, have at least 1 airline, 1 hotel, but you could also have, several of each. But the key is we don't need to do much tweaking to that core cards, that those core 3 to 4. There's a whole bunch you can tack on beyond there, but I would say a fully 5 cards, you've got a insanely epic lineup, not only on the points earning piece, but then factoring in the status and some other potential savings and stuff like that. That's when you're in business.
Yeah, super cool. All right, couple more questions for you, and then we'll wrap. One, does it ever make sense to buy points? You mentioned that a little while ago. So when should somebody buy points with cash?
Yeah, so this is something that I do multiple times a year. So essentially, to earn these Amex points and these Chase points, hey, we got to spend money for those, right? Well, there's opportunities to buy points and miles where essentially, I can keep those hard-earned Amex points for scenarios where I can't like buy points or anything like that. So what you can effectively do is you're able to buy these points when they're on sale to effectively book a business class seat for what it would cost to fly economy. So let's just say this, like for anywhere from, depending on the sale, for anywhere from like $700 to maybe $1,000, you could purchase the miles that you would need to book a one-way business class flight to Europe. So I've done this several times, but we need to look at, you need to be a little savvy with using the points. Because if you're not savvy with using them, you're going to probably break even at best, which doesn't make sense. Yeah. So, like Air Canada is one that I buy a lot. Okay. I bought a lot of Air Canada miles last year. I like all the different types of flights and partners that I can book with. I like how they price their flights. But basically, if you're able to acquire miles for, less than 1.5 cents per point, you can then go to redeem those, just like we talked about with the Amex points and transferring them out. We're still working off those award charts and things like that where, like I said, if you paid $1,000 for the miles, basically that's what an economy seat would cost. But bingo, I found that same flight. Now, could I have sent Amex points to do that same thing? Sure. But, maybe I'm a little lower below my threshold. Maybe I like to have 500,000 points at all time. Maybe I'm a little bit below that. So I'm going to keep those points and keep kind of building them in where, hey, pay $800 for a seat. No big deal. Well, let's just buy the miles and do it. So there's definitely some like pieces of the puzzle. Like I said, you got to be proficient with using them. I would say it's best to have some kind of intended use over the next year. But I would just say, do it with a purpose. Yeah. It's like, hey, am I trying to do something? What miles could I purchase that will help me do that? Or, hey, I can buy these miles at a great price right now. What could I possibly do with them? So you got to have some kind of plan, obviously. But the idea is, and this is especially for people where we're not generating hundreds and hundreds of thousands of points a month or a year. Maybe like back like me in my 20s where, I was earning a good amount of points, all things considered, but it was pretty easy to wipe those out. So if I can buy these miles, I can preserve those points for some of that crazier stuff that maybe there's never going to be a scenario where I could buy points. Sure. So I probably spent $7,500 last year on miles. Like Air Canada, Avianca, I think I bought some American miles. But I effectively turned that into $50,000 in flights. Yeah.
On another level.
So that's a whole nother piece of the puzzle, but absolutely something that can be done.
Yeah, really cool. All right, couple more. One, this is gonna be a tough one for you.
Yeah.
You've been at 79 countries.
Yeah.
Where is your favorite country you've ever been to?
Oh, this one's tough. So I think there's like, I always try to like answer one, but I think there's different kind of types of travel, and especially with this points piece. So I would say my favorite place I've traveled to, let's just say maybe kind of based off accommodation or that kind of experience, was just like you're going to be having that overwater villa kind of experience. So, Maldives is obviously one of them. Bora Bora is probably my personal favorite.
Yeah.
I've been there quite a few times. There's not a ton of properties. It's actually really hard to book Bora Bora compared to Maldives because there's so many hotels in the Maldives. There's just lots more opportunities where Bora Bora is a little more exclusive. You get this crazy mountain. So that's absolutely epic. Maybe not so much points related, but my first trip I ever went on was out to Nepal. Let's just say it's a little bit different than the St. Regis Bora Bora over there. But that's what kind of opened my eyes to the travel piece where like you get to actually see how other people are living in the other side of the world. And you're like, whoa, like this is wild. So in terms of having like just that eye-opening travel experience, Nepal was absolutely insane. I hiked up to Annapurna Base Camp. It was romping through Kathmandu. I mean, it was just a wild experience at 23 to see something insanely opposite of what we see in our everyday lives here. And it makes you appreciate it too. I mean, I was excited to go on that trip, but I will tell you, I was very excited to be getting on the plane knowing that I get to go home back to the States.
For
like,
sure.
thank God.
You get to go eat a hamburger or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where's somewhere that every American should try to go in their life?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think in terms of, I mean, you should go to as many places as possible, but I would say in terms of that anybody, whether you're, someone that's on the older side, whether you're a college person backpacking, I mean, Europe, it's so easy to get to Europe these days, and there's so much that you can see. And just within Europe, I mean, obviously we've got our different cultures here within the States and all that kind of stuff, but with what you can experience in Europe, and the ability to bounce around, I mean, and trains are cheap, and actually do it on a budget type thing as well too. But I say anywhere in any specific spot in Europe, but no, they're all going to be awesome experiences. But get to Europe, go spend a few weeks there, bounce around, take the train, kind of have that experience. Because it's so easy to get to now. I mean, if you're on the East Coast, you could fly to London in the same amount of time it is to go to LAX. And so many Americans don't really travel much outside of like, going to Cabo for, the 7th time, or, I'm going to go down to the Caribbean. Like, that's cool. But for the same travel time, go to Europe, like go experience a whole different culture. It's safe over there. People speak English for the most part. So it's like all these things that people are like, I don't know. Do they do this over there? And guys, we have smartphones now too. Okay. Like anything you could possibly need when you're traveling, you got it in the palm of your hand. Because like I said, even with my first trips, there might have been like very limited cellular data. The Google Maps wasn't anything there. So like even just seeing that technology piece, at least travel is really freaking, it's as easy as it's ever been to go do now. And then like I said, you factor the credit card points and stuff like that into it too. It's like, you just got to go.
79 countries. What has traveling done for you as a human being?
I mean, honestly, it's like just to be able to like just see, the world's actually like a small place to me now. Cause me jumping on a plane from, from Vietnam or Hong Kong to come back to the States, like, it's a long day, but it's almost like you can kind of teleport. So it's made the world feel like a small place, but then within that, it's crazy how big. I've been to 79 countries and I've barely scratched the surface. It's massive, and it's not even going to these countries. I mean, there's countries and cultures within all these countries. So it's just like, it's made the world seem small to me, but it's also the exact opposite in the sense of it's made me see, how big the world is. Cause I've been to 79 countries, but, God, there's so much to it. And there's, so, maybe some places aren't quite, as deep in terms of like the experiences you'll think or the way that people are living. Maybe there's not that much differences, but then there's some countries where, I mean, it's a completely, you could spend months in a place and have a different, experience everywhere you go. So I think one, like just having the laptop lifestyle now where, with technology, with the internet, with being able to have your own business, it's like you could run your business from anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So why, I'm homeless. Like I literally don't have a home. I've been doing this for 3 years where I'm living in a hotel where, the travel piece has just been, I don't know. It's just so stimulating where like every day there's something new that you're new this, new that. You're having these different, you can kind of go about your day in the same way. I've got my routines, but then there's nothing mundane about it. It's like, I'm going to wake up in the same place. I know exactly what I'm going to do today. There's not, I mean, honestly, I could go for some of that for right now, I will say, but it just makes life and everything you're doing just like that much more exciting and exhilarating and fresh. There's always something new,
It's so cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait to go to more. I've been to like 15 countries.
That's still, that's still more than most.
Yeah.
It's still more than most.
This is what, 195 technically?
Yeah, it's 195, and like there's different people count it like for different. This is more of a territory versus that. But I think it's officially 195 official countries. I've never said like, oh my God, like I'm going to travel to every country in the world. Could I someday? I mean, maybe, but definitely not a goal of mine.
There's some you probably don't want to really, right? Like you probably don't need to go to North Korea anytime soon.
Right. Like I want to make sure that, okay, it'd be cool to go somewhere. I want to make sure that I'm able to come back home. Like that's the key thing. So, but I've definitely got some on the hit list, so I'm sure I'll probably hit 100 over the next, year and a half. I'm slowing down I'm still traveling. I'm just going to be moving around less this year is kind of my plan. Cause last year was a little too crazy, but I'll hit 100 easily, and wherever I end up, I end up.
There you go.
So
I love it.
Yeah.
Tommy, do you help people book travel? Do you coach people on how to do what you do? And if so, how do people get a hold of you to figure that out?
Yeah, for sure. So this was kind of like, everything that we kind of talked on today. It was like, this is what got the wheels spinning with me, not only just kind of getting into the entrepreneurial world, but it's how can I help people, and how can I help people travel? Like I've gotten really good at this, and people have been reaching out. So it's like, how can I start a business that I've always wanted to start, and how can I have it where it's going to help people achieve and unlock all the things that I've been doing? So essentially, but just about 3 years ago now, that's when I started all this. But we do everything from teaching you how to do it to doing it all completely for you. So my business partner Eli and I, we really crafted a few offers specifically catered towards travel-loving business owners, where there's lots of spend there. Time is extremely important. Just kind of like what your scenario is, where hey, we've got this epic opportunity of all these points and stuff like that. I know I can do something with them, but my time should not be spent figuring out, well, what did they fly here? Do they do this, that? So it was like, how can we, curate that experience for the business owners? Because as you know, you're running 8 businesses, you should probably try to take at least a little break every now and then to be able to just have somebody, because it's not just the credit card points too. Between myself and the team, we've been all over the world. So it's also having like that one-on-one like support and travel advising, and then factor in the part that we know how to 5 to 10 extra credit card points on top of that. And then we've also got, you don't need to be a business owner too. We've got educational things where obviously we've got a course, we've got weekly live Q&A calls with myself and the team. But we more or less kind of give you the shortcuts and the easy steps to 10x your travel. Our goal is we want to try to 10x your travel in 90 days. That's the goal. And whether it's, hey, here's all the tools and resources for you to be able to go do this yourself. We're going to save you some time, show you some shortcuts and all that kind of jazz. Or on the polar opposite side of, hey, here's what's going on. Do it for me. We're going to dial in your spend. We're going to make sure you're 3 to 4xing your spend or your points earning from that. And then you're going to have a fully done for you. Think of like a points concierge, travel advisor, all that kind of stuff, where we've got business owners in every industry possible. And I think it was just last month, I think we redeemed about, I think it was like 12 or 13 million points.
Wow.
But yeah, we average about 10 to 15 million points a month redeemed for our clients, where we're getting that average of 5 or 6 cents per point. And it's not just the travel, we're providing these epic travel experiences as well too. So,
wild.
But yeah, so that's been awesome. So like obviously Instagram, it's Travel Like Tommy. My business partner Eli, it's at Eli Travel Guy. And you can find us at just freedomtravelsystems.com. Shoot us over a DM. Myself and one of the team members, we can hop on a call with you and see what's going on with you. Probably give you some value and point you in the right direction of what would be the best fit to helping you achieve your travel goals.
Yeah.
So
we do have a special link for your people too.
Okay.
Drop that in.
Cool. What is it?
It's going to be freedomtravelsystems.com/Zaback.
Okay.
So.
And then also you can go to freedomtravelsystems.com/Zaback. And you'll be able to get that link right there. I'll also link all of that down below. So every link will be in the description below, including Tommy's IG, Eli's IG, everything we just mentioned will be down there. So make sure you go check it out. No matter what platform you're listening on, just find the link. It'll be there. And Tommy, I appreciate you being on,
hey, man,
brother.
thanks for having me, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Of course. Hey, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.